Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Samira, and I'm delighted to be here with you today on behalf of Oxford X. So, a little bit about us if you're new to the channel. So, what we do is we specialize in preparing students for the 11 plus exams, helping them build their confidence and master the skills they need to excel. So, with years of experience tutoring 11 plus students, I've helped countless children succeed in their entrance exams and eventually get into the schools of their choice. And so today what I'll be doing is showing you some difficult topics that often come up in the 11 plus exam. There have been past live streams where I've gone through other difficult trick questions that have come up in the exam. So please do go back and look at them. I'll provide some expert strategies on how to tackle these questions. So if you're preparing for the 11 plus, or if you're just a parent looking on how to support your child, then you've come to the right place. Now, you can probably guess by the screen that I have shared, we are going to be going over hyphens for 11 plus. Now, this one obviously comes up in the English component of the exam. And it's something that you need to know the rules with. And it's something that comes up, with parenthesis as a general. So if anyone in the comments, before I go into hyphens in particular, does anyone know what parenthesis means? So it's a type of punctuation. Does anyone in the comments know when I would use a parenthesis? Or if you want to give me a type of parenthesis, I've already given you one type, which is a hyphen. What other types of parentheses are there, or what is a parenthesis? I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll give you not 2 minutes, sorry, it's way too long, isn't it? I'm going to give you 30 seconds for anyone to comment if they think they know what a parenthesis is. Okay, I am going to spoil it for you. So parenthesis is basically a word that is inserted into a sentence. And what it does is that if I was to read the sentence without the parenthesis, the sentence would still make grammatical sense. Yeah. So in essence, a types of parenthesis can be a hyphen. It can also be a dash. It can also be bracket. I think the most common one you probably see is a bracket. So like I said, it's a word or phrase that is used to separate off information that isn't essential to the overall sentence. So it can be like extra information, for example. Now where the dashes, brackets, and hyphens, etc., come in handy is that they signal to us what is the extra information, essentially. So if I was to give you an example, just top of my head, if I had something like Mount Everest, and then in brackets I had 8,828 meters, and then close the bracket, is the highest mountain in the world. Mount Everest is the highest mountain in the world is evidently enough for it to make grammatical sense, right? But what I've done by adding in brackets 8,828 is I've given a bit more insight into how high the Mount Everest is. So it's extra information, essentially. And the way that I've separated it is using brackets. So there are brackets, hyphens, dashes that you can use. But today I'm most specifically going to be focusing on hyphens, because that's the one that tends to be more tricky. Hyphens aren't just used for parentheses, not just used to add extra information. They have many, many rules to them. So let's go over them. Right. I'm going to make the slideshow bigger. If anyone has any questions as I am talking through, please feel free to pause. I will pause actually and just leave a comment below. Right, guys. So by the end of this, hopefully you'll be able to use hyphens correctly and confidently. So like I said, hyphens, it has many, many rules. It's often sometimes used to join words together, right? Now, the misconception is that hyphen are the same as a dash. No, they're very different, right? In fact, hyphens are shorter than a dash, okay? There are no spaces between a hyphen and the word it joins. So, surnames sometimes have hyphens. My surname personally doesn't have a hyphen, but I've seen names that often have a hyphen, and it's often like double-barreled names, right? So if I had, for example, Professor Grubbly Plank, very, very peculiar surname. Grubbly Plank is, it's two surnames together. It's not a middle name, but it's two surnames that are put together with and separated using a hyphen. So some forenames are often also hyphenated. So you can have like Sally Ann, but then people just call her Sally, but her full name is Sally Ann. Another one I know, one of my close people are called Anna Marie. So you have Anna hyphen Marie. So that's just her full name is Anna, like her full name is Anna Maria. However, we just call her Anna. Right? And then her surname is often separate. So marriages. So yeah. So when you get married, if the wife decides to take the husband's name, you'll have, you know, her surname and then sometimes her husband's surname hyphen together. That's another example. Okay. Why else are they used? They're used in numbers. This is one that I often see people get wrong, which is very, very important. When you're writing numbers, and often actually this is overlapping into maths now, because there is a question in the 11 plus maths exam that will ask you to write out a number. So write it in terms of like you have 10,002, write it out rather than, you know, write the digits out. And therefore you need to join out by hyphens, yeah? So any numbers you're joining between 21 and 99, you do need to join using a hyphen. So 64 is joined up together. 79, 232, 200 you're not joining up because just numbers between 21 and 99, right? 500, 5,000, 200, etc. Another one that I've often seen. Now, in the 11 plus English component of the exam, there's often a exercise that will ask you to find out what's grammatically incorrect. And the most common one that I've seen, especially this year for the 11 plus exams, is using hyphens with ages. So when you're saying, I have a 13-year-old daughter, it's really important that you separate the 13-year-old with hyphens. Why is that? If I just have 13-year-old, right? That doesn't make any sense. If I have a 13, she's 13 years old, right? Year represents the year and old. They're three different words, right? If you don't signal that they're three different words, that's incorrect. Yeah. So my daughter is 13 years old. The way that you write that is shown above. So you've written how you would write 13. And then year is separate and then old is separate. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Again, here, my son who is 2 years old, right? You wouldn't say 2 years. You wouldn't write he was a 2-year-old, like 2-year-old without the hyphen. You need to separate using a hyphen. Yeah. Right. The other one I've seen is time. So when you're using time, so she had just missed the 1 o'clock, so called the 3:30. If I was just to write 3:30 without the hyphen, so as you have it here, without the hyphen, that wouldn't make any sense. 3:30, you're really separating the time. If I think of 3:30, I'm thinking of the small hands on 3 and the big hands on 30. So it's really just showing you how it would be represented in the digital clock. Again, here, 2 o'clock. 2 is obviously it's sharp on 2, and then o'clock. You do need to separate it. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Destinations. Now, you probably don't use bus times very often, but in the much older times, I'm not that old, but I remember when I was younger, bus times often used so hyphens to separate it. So if you were going from, for example, trying to think of something, Kensington to Paddington, it would be separated with a hyphen, and then it will show you the time. So Kensington to Paddington bus, 9 o'clock, but they'd separate that using a hyphen. Now, what the hyphen means is 2. So Kensington hyphen, which means Kensington to Paddington bus, is at this time. So they separate using hyphens. You probably don't see it as much now, but it was very common. You know, when you go to the bus stops back in the day, I think they might still have it, actually. So when you go, you see the like a times sheet on the bus stop, and then it's got like the times, and they've separated like the destinations. Now, if it was Paddington to Kensington, it would be Paddington first, hyphen to Kensington, because the hyphen represents the 2 when you're thinking about destinations. So again, here the Heathrow Paris flight has been delayed. Heathrow to Paris flight has been delayed. So the person's in Heathrow and they're going to Paris. Yeah. So here, Hastings to Ashford to London. Saves us time rather than having to write. He's using the Hastings to Ashford to London route. That would look peculiar, which is why we would use a hyphen to separate that. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. Ooh, task time. So where would the hyphen be here? So first things first, I'm gonna let everyone have a look at this, and I want you guys to try and do this on your own first. Maybe do it on your book, or if anybody wants to comment anything, please do. I'm gonna give you guys a bit of time to do that. Right, sorry guys, we accidentally had technical issues. So let me just share the screen again. Right. There we go. Perfect. So hopefully, I'm going to give you guys 30 more seconds to have a look at that. And then I'm going to spill out the answers. If anyone has any comments or anything they want to point out, please do comment below. Right, okay, I'm going to spoil it for you guys. So, the first thing that needs hyphen is the 9-year-old. The reason being, we did talk about this, is the, oh God. Reason being is because the ages often need to be separated with a hyphen. So 9-year-old represents that she's 9 years old, right? Sally Ann is her name, so that's her full name, Sally Ann. So that needs a hyphen. So what I'm doing as I'm going along is I'm just essentially applying all the rules that I've just discussed with you. So Sally Ann, 9-year-old. She made sure she finished reading page 31. That's another one. The man who was fourth, 2 years old, arrived home later than usual, having missed the 7 o'clock train from London. Again, time needs to be used. You need to use a hyphen here. He had caught the Bridgerton to London train. Again, hyphen here. Early in the day, his boss, Mrs. Winston Jones, had made him stay late. Hopefully, you guys can see that everything that I pointed out that needs a hyphen is just applicable with the rules that we've just gone over. So using hyphens for the ages, the forenames, the time, the destinations. Perfect. Right. Now, you often have hyphens with prefixes. Now, prefixes is obviously the thing, a word that comes before another word. So self-assured, self-catering, self-confident. The reason why you need to add a hyphen, does anyone want to comment why you think you need a hyphen when we're doing this? Anyone have any ideas why we need a hyphen? Let me have a look at the comments, see if anyone's got anything. Oh, sorry. Why do I need a hyphen after a prefix? Right, everyone is extremely shy today. So, the thing that you need a hyphen for a prefix is for a couple of reasons. It's first to prevent confusion, right? To clarify meaning, right? So if I'm having self, what does self mean? It means to do something on your own, right? Having like your own, right? So like, I don't know, like yourself is something like personal to you, right? Doing something good. So if I have self-assured, self-creating, and self-confident, well, how does that change the meaning of the word assured, catering, and confident, right? Well, if I've got self-assured, right? Assured means what? Assured means like um, having confidence and having, capability to do something, right? It could be, having that assurance also. So like that's actually spelled differently. So, but it's like having basically confidence, right? Determination in something. Now, if I've got self-assured, now how is that different? What that's essentially doing is that now that word has changed, and it means having or showing confidence in my own abilities. If I'm a self-assured person, I have confidence in my own abilities, right? Self-catering. Now, what does catering mean? Well, if catering means to, if you have often like if you have a birthday party or something, it will often need catering. So having like food and drinks at a gathering, right? However, if I have the word self-catering, well, how is that different? Anyone want to comment on how that is different? Let me have a look at those comments. Right, I'm going to split it. So self-catering is where basically guests can prepare their own meals, right? So it's something that you have to do yourself. Again, self-confident. Well, confidence is just a general noun, right? Or it can be a verb too, honestly, to be confident. However, if I have self-confidence, it means that I myself have that confidence. And what that prefix is essentially done, I mean, it's now referring about self-confidence. Change the word to be in essence applicable to me, right? X. If I think of like he's an ex-con. Well, con is like someone that probably would have done a crime. An ex-con is probably someone that's or some con is he's someone that's probably in prison or something for having been convicted for a crime. If I say ex-con, he's now no longer in prison. However, we've acknowledged that he has committed a crime, so he was in prison. Same thing here. If I have policeman, he's a policeman. He's an ex-policeman. He's no longer a policeman. So it basically means former, right? Again, all seeing, all knowing, all important. Now, if I just have all seeing, or if I just have seeing, well, seeing just means to be able to see, look around, right? However, if I have all, it means everything. So seeing, I see everything. I'm all knowing, right? So all knowing. If I know, if I have knowing, it's just like, oh yes, I know how to do that, right? If I have all knowing, it's just that I have this awareness and this capability to know everything, which is obviously very impossible. No one knows everything, right? But that's what it means. So hopefully that makes sense, right? So here's another example. We have talked about why we need prefixes, but I will go over this again. So the teacher will need to remark our books. Remark suggests to read something means to basically do it again, right? Read the prefix, do it again. So if I'm saying remark, she's marking it again. That was a silly remark. Remark means something else, right? Remark means comment. Can you see how the prefix, what the hyphen has done is change the meaning of the word? Remark without a hyphen means a comment, so make a silly comment or whatever. If I have hyphen mark, that's changing the meaning of the word. It's no longer comment, but now it actually means to do something again, to redo the mark. Again, recover. Hyphen cover is to cover the book again, because the prefix re means to do it again, right? But if I have recover without the hyphen, well, what that means is to basically obtain the book back, right? Can you see how the meaning of what hyphen has done? So it's really just preventing the confusion. Again, spellings. Some words are difficult to read without hyphens. Okay, so de-ice instead of dice. So the reason that we've done that is because without a hyphen, it would actually be quite hard to read. Again, here, co-worker. If I didn't have the hyphen, it would just be cow-worker. Right? Which I don't actually think is a word. So can you see how it's basically making the spelling having a lot more clarity? Amazing. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to have a go at doing this. Have a look at this and So I'm going to spoil it for you guys now. So her ex-boyfriend needed a hyphen because you're showing that he's no longer her boyfriend. Now, for this one, what I would have really done, and again, this is really common. This type of exercise is really common for them. Plus, it's really good you get your head around this. Read the whole paragraph, yeah. Then figure out where the hyphen needs, because by the context in the sentence, you'll figure it out a bit more. So her ex-boyfriend made a cutting remark. He's no longer her boyfriend, because I'm assuming that remark really hurt, which it did because it's cutting. So it needs a hyphen because due to that remark, he's no longer her boyfriend. So that's her former boyfriend. When she told him that she had recovered the walls in pink wool. Now, recovered, I can't get a wall back, so it has to have a hyphen. I'm changing the meaning of the word. But she was self-confident enough to ignore it. If I just had self-confident, that wouldn't make grammatical sense, right? So it's separating the self-confident with a hyphen. He himself was an ex. I'm just going to ignore where I put the hyphens for now, because I'm trying to show you the importance of making sure you read the context in the sentence before you try to identify where the hyphens are necessary. He himself was an ex-policeman, but I decided to leave the work when they decided to promote his co-worker and not him. So if he's left the force, I'm assuming he's no longer a policeman, and therefore that ex-policeman needs a hyphen. He's a former policeman. When they decided to promote his co-worker, can't have a co-worker. We've discussed that before. So it would have a hyphen there. Amazing. Right. I'm actually going to skip this because it's not as common. Compound adjectives. Now, what are compound adjectives? They are adjectives that are joined together. So if I have compound adjectives, sometimes I separate them using a hyphen as well. So if I have old-fashioned, now the reason why I need a hyphen is because if I had the old-fashioned, that's two different words, right? However, if I'm describing something as old-fashioned, I'm suggesting that it's quite not as modern, right? Probably something that's a bit worn out, something that's not today's style, right? And why do I need a hyphen between old-fashioned and why am I not just leaving it as old-fashioned? The sentence wouldn't make sense. If I decided his clothes were rather old-fashioned, well, surely I would need an and to separate. Surely I'd need a word. If I'm saying it's old and fashioned, I need a word. But why English has made it so easier for us is because you can use a hyphen to separate them, right? You can use a hyphen to join it together. They certainly thought the thought-provoking lesson on, certainly enjoyed the thought-provoking lesson on hyphens. Well, you know what thought means, right? And you know what provoking means, so giving sort of like rise, giving rise to a reaction or an emotion. So if I have thought provoking, it's like I'm basically, I've coupled those adjectives together to show that it was actually something that was quite, it gave a lot of thought and it brought on emotion, right? Rather than having to write enjoyed the thought and provoking, I can just join, I have two adjectives together, join them up using and separate them using a hyphen because they are two different words essentially. Amazing. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Right. I'm just going to see if anyone's left any comments. Does anyone have any questions at all before I start to wrap up? Nope. Perfect. So that actually brings us to the end of today's lesson, guys. So what we did today is have a look at hyphens. I did explain parentheses a little bit. Parentheses and grammar in the 11 plus exam is obviously a well-wanted topic, but hopefully that little lesson on hyphens makes sense and you can use hyphens confidently now. So just remember the rules. You've got the time, you've got the destination, you've got the ages, the forenames, surnames, and then we also had a look at prefixes, and we also had a look at the spelling of things, and then we talked a little bit about why it's important that we use hyphens and compound adjectives obviously towards the very end. Hopefully that made sense. Next week we will be going for something else, but I wanted to say that if you have any other questions, please do leave comments. I will look at it. So a little bit about Oxford X before I go off. Is that we are offering free 11 plus assessments for students. In order to take that assessment, I've got a wonderful QR code on the screen, so please scan that QR code after the lesson, and what that will do, we'll go onto the website, and what that will do is take you to do the assessment and then offer you at the end of the assessment a free consultation where you can have experience one-to-one tutoring with me get to my lucky face again. And after each session, what will happen is that you will be provided, both parents and students, for reference, is a detailed summary of the lesson. You also get a quiz tailored to the topic that's covered. And why Oxbridge X differentiates from other tuition companies is because we create a personalized lesson plan to target the key areas for improvement and also leverage sophisticated AI. So it's very personalized to you. And I think one of the most critical things that parents often ask for, in my experience of teaching 11 plus students, is how can we get from stage A to stage B, right? It's really paramount that progress is being made from one lesson to the next. So having a summary and having a very detailed feedback of how a child's progressing will allow you to find out what areas you need to get to that goal. Yeah. So please do take the assessment, and please, if you have any questions that you've come across that are quite tricky, please submit your questions through the website as well. It's a contact form on the website, so we've got the website down below here. So go through that and submit any questions that you have, and I could go through it in our next session. So I really hope you guys enjoyed today's session. If you liked the video, hopefully you did, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss on the next session. And I'd like to say thank you so much for coming on, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.